ISO 9000 certification. When an organization chooses not to pursue ISO 9000 certification or not to retain the ISO 9000 certificate, it should make no difference to the way the organization is managed. It's similar to the man who chooses not to take the course examination. He still has the knowledge he has acquired whether or not he takes the exam and gets his certificate. What he cannot do is demonstrate to others that he has reached a certain level of education without having to prove it every time. People who know him don't care that he didn't take the exam. It is only those who don't know him that he will have difficulty convincing. Many organizations were driven to seek ISO 9000 certification by pressure from customers, rather than as an incentive to improve business performance, and therefore sought the quickest route to certification. The critics called this coercion, and like most command and control strategies, believed it resulted in managers cheating just to get the badge. What was out of character was that suppliers that were well known to customers were made to jump through this hoop in order to get a tick in a box in a list of approved suppliers. It became a necessary evil to do business. Certainly, when perceived as a means to get a badge, the standard was no more than a marketing tool. It could have been used as a framework for improvement, but the way it was imposed on organizations generated fear brought about by ignorant customers who mistakenly believed that imposing ISO 9000 would improve quality. To achieve anything in our society, we inevitably have to impose rules and regulations, what the critics regard as command and control. But unfortunately, any progress we make masks the disadvantages of this strategy, and because we only do what we are required to do, few people learn. When people make errors, more rules are imposed until we are put in a straitjacket, and productivity plummets. There is a need for regulations to keep sharks out of the bathing area, but if the regulations prevent bathing, we defeat the objective, as did many of the customers that imposed ISO 9000. Certification is not a requirement of ISO 9000, nor is it encouraged by the standard. It is, however, encouraged by governments, and this is where the misunderstanding arises. Governments encourage organizations to use ISO 9000 alongside product standards in their purchasing strategy so as to raise the standard of quality in national and international trade. Department of Trade and Industry, 1982. Certification became a requirement of customers. They mandated it through contracts. ISO 9000 was a convenient standard to use in order for customers to gain an assurance of quality. ISO 9000 was launched at a time when customers in the Western world took an adversarial approach to their suppliers. It came out of the defense industry where there was a long tradition of command and control. As a consequence, ISO 9000 followed the same pattern of imposing requirements to prevent failures that experience had shown led to poor product quality. ISO 9000 did not require purchasers to impose ISO 9000 on their suppliers. What it did require was for purchasers to determine the controls necessary to ensure purchased product met their requirements. But the easy way of meeting this requirement was to impose ISO 9000. It saved the purchaser from having to assess, for themselves, the capability of suppliers. Unfortunately, the assessment process was ineffective because it led to suppliers getting the badge that were not capable of meeting their customers' requirements. ISO 9001 required suppliers to establish a quality system to ensure that product met specified requirements, but it allowed organizations to specify their own requirements. Provided they did what they said they did, they could receive the certificate. As there were no specific requirements in the standard that caused the auditors to verify that these requirements were those needed to meet the needs and expectations of the customers, organizations could produce rubbish and still receive the badge. Consistency was being checked, not quality. Before ISO 9000, organizations were faced with meeting all manner of rules and regulations. Government inspectors and financial auditors frequently examined the books and practices for evidence of wrongdoing, but none of this resulted in organizations creating something that was not integrated within the routines they applied to manage the business. When ISO 9000 came along, many organizations embarked upon a course of action that was perceived to have no value except to keep the badge, the ISO 9000 certificate. Activities were only documented and performed because the standard required it. Take away the certification and there was no longer a business need for many of these procedures and activities. Believing that ISO 9000 was only about documenting what you do, organizations set to work on responding to the requirements of the standard as a list of activities to be carried out. Again, this belief became so widespread that ISO coordinators, or ISO 9000 project managers, were appointed to establish and maintain the quality system. In some organizations, managers were assigned responsibility for meeting the requirements of a particular element of the standard, even though there was not only no requirement to do so, but also no business benefit from doing so. Consultants were engaged to write the documents, and apart from some new procedures governing internal audits, management review, and document control, very little changed. There was a lot of money thrown at these projects in the quest to gain certification. However, none of the surveys conducted since 1987 have shown any significant improvement in an organization's overall performance, quite simply because nothing changed, not the processes, not the people, nor the culture. The system existed just to keep the badge on the wall. The 9th ISO survey, International Organization of Standardization 2000, indicated that 9,862 certificates had been withdrawn at the end of 1999, and of these, 473 were for reasons of either insufficient return on investment or no business advantage. However, some 7,186 organizations discontinued certification for reasons unknown, indicating that certification was probably perceived as not adding value.